Welcome back to my Halloween month reviews, and we are continuing with The Black Phone 2, once again directed by Scott Derekson, and once again starring Ethan Hawke as the Grabber. It takes place 4 years after the first film, and Finn, played by Mason Thames, is still haunted by reliving all the terrible moments that he went through in the first film, and his sister Gwen, played by Madaline McGraw, starts having dreams about these kids that were murdered in this summer camp. So both Finn and Gwen have to go to this summer camp and figure out what's going on, while also, spoilers for the end of the first film, are haunted by the Grabber as a ghost after Finn killed him in the end of that film. So it's technically a Blumhouse version of Nightmare on Elm Street. The first film made a lot of money when it first came out. It was one of the most popular horror films from 2022, and Blumhouse decided to make a sequel to that just to have the same success. And I really didn't see a point in them making a sequel because I was perfectly fine with just one film. But they did announce that Scott Derekson was going to come back to direct it. I was thinking, okay, I'll give it a chance, because I do love Scott Derekson as a director of horror films, and I did love his first Black Phone film, which is a movie I didn't get a chance to review when that was out 3 years ago, but I did watch at home, and it was really good. It was a very dark and creepy film that had real events that were happening in the 70s, while also having a touching story with its characters. And really, I can't say the same about this film. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate this film. I still enjoyed it. I do think it's still worth watching in the theaters, but it's not as good as the first film. So the good first, Ethan Hawke is once again fantastic as the Grabber. He makes the character terrifying, and every time he comes on screen, he feels like a presence that is terrifying to be around, and just him alone is definitely worth buying a ticket. And the rest of the acting is pretty solid. Mason Thames is still great as Finn, and his character has some different problems this time around, because in the first film, he was bullied a lot in school, and he had to deal with his father abusing his sister for having dreams that would have visions. Here though, he's dealing with some serious problems where he hasn't recovered mentally. He starts seeing things that look like him, and he's getting phone calls from ghosts that would want his help and would constantly answer and saying that he doesn't want their help at all. He just wants to stay out of it. He's trying to bury it in his mind, where he's trying to get all that out of his head and pretend it didn't happen, which can lead to some scenes where he can be pretty unlikable and start looking like a bully at times. And the difference here is that he doesn't feel like he's the main character of this film like he was in the first film. Instead, that's kind of been passed on to his sister Gwen. We see her try to do more than what Finn does, where she's trying to learn more about how these kids died in the summer camp, where we see her have those dreams and we see her learn more about how these kids got killed and how she's trying to get away from the Grabber's spirit, making her probably my favorite character in the whole film, while also having a great performance from Madaline McGraw. Just like in the first film, this movie does a really good job with the production design and the atmosphere, making this whole summer camp feel and look isolated, with the color palette, the nighttime sequences, the old school filter that would happen in the dream sequences. When it comes to those moments, they do not disappoint. And without getting into spoilers, this movie does attempt to flesh out some of its characters a bit, in particular the Grabber. Now, you don't get to learn everything about him, so if you wanted to learn more about how he became the Grabber and what made him this way, you're not gonna get that. But what you do get from his backstory is that he sees a character that he starts to learn more about that does lead to a big twist that kind of makes me look at the first film a little differently, in a good way. But those are the things I liked, and now we are unfortunately gonna get to the issues. And one of them is that it does at times feel like it's copying off of the first film, and what I mean by that is that in the first film, Gwen was dealing with issues about having dreams that are visions showing how these kids died, and a lot of people around her are looking at her like they're thinking that she's not normal. Here, it's the exact same thing, where a lot of people are looking at her and not thinking that she's normal, except for one character, which we'll mention in a minute, where even both Finn and their father are still pretending that her dreams are just regular dreams. They're not thinking that they're visions at all, and she's the only one that realizes that they are visions. So she's forced to realize that it's a dream, and it's the same thing that we're doing again, even though we already made that a big thing in the first film. But once again, both Finn and their father here are just denying that she has those. And as for Finn, like I said before, he's been trying to get the grabber out of his head by doing terrible things. Like in the beginning of the film, he would just beat up a random new kid for bugging him. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Why are you making Finn do all these terrible things? I get that you're trying to make sure that he's been going through those issues because of the grabber, but don't have him do things that make him a bad person. He's pretty much now become what he hated in the first film. There's another character in this film that comes along with Finn and Gwen to the camp, and honestly, this character felt pointless in the film. I mean, he's not annoying and he's not hateable. He just doesn't really do much for the film. He doesn't really do anything, actually. And the only reason that he's here is that because he has a crush on Gwen, he thinks that she's cool for having those dreams, and he has a car that would take her and Finn to the summer camp, and that's it. But besides that, he's just along for the ride, and he doesn't really do much, making him feel pointless. Now, as for the finale, it does feel a little jarring, because it starts to feel very cinematic, and then later in this finale, it starts to feel like an action movie, which felt like it was mixing up the tone a bit, where it started to feel like a completely different movie. However, after that finale, we have one more scene with a character that I thought was very touching and made this ending feel heartfelt. So the Black Phone 2 is not as good as the first film. It does have some issues with its story and its characters, where the story feels like it's copying the first film and having its main characters doing some very questionable and bad decisions, but it still made up for that with the acting, the atmosphere, the production design, and the dream sequences. Did we need a sequel to the Black Phone? Not really, but I still enjoyed with what we got. I'm gonna give the Black Phone 2 a B. I know people have had some issues with it recently because so far the reactions for this film have been pretty mixed. Some people loved it and some people hate it, and there are some that are in the middle, and I'm one of the people that's in the middle. So guys, if you have seen this film, what do you think about it? Do you think it's as good as the first film, or do you like the first film more? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting from on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.